Alrighty, time to give the old graphics card a little bit of a break. Now, we're going to talk about a study that was done a while back. Right off the top, I can't remember the study, I just know that it was paid for either by the banks or by the insurance companies. And it was essentially to plot out and predict what the future would look like in terms of the demographics. Alright, this has been cited many times by the manosphere slash oh god, I can't even use the five letter because YouTube suppresses that. Anyway, the study essentially wanted to see what the progression through aging would look like. Just, general terms, the demographic plan. And essentially, this is what they came up with. So, the expectation at current rates and projection is that more than half of women, as they get into their old age, will be single. And essentially, a whole bunch of single women, a whole bunch of single mothers, and a whole bunch of dudes who will honestly retire pretty comfortably as long as they don't, quote unquote, take the bridge. All right, we all know what that means, I assume, but you never know. Now, what does this actually mean in terms of actionable intelligence? Okay, well, there's one thing that you can guarantee, all right, that you can absolutely guarantee, and I know Undead Chronic, in terms of individuals who's talked about this, he's already made moves, okay? So, single women, you can almost guarantee they're at least going to have a cat. Especially as women get older, they will, start to feed all the little cute animals. And what ends up happening is women tend to end up with more like two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight cats. I do know of women who literally feed every single stray and they have over a dozen. Okay. Now, you can think whatever you want on that. That is a lot of litter boxes to clean, but regardless, regardless, when it comes to, and this is not financial advice, when it comes to moves that I know Chronic has made, he has definitely put money into the brands that produce dog and cat food because there are some women who go for dogs as well. There are some women, unfortunately, who go for big dogs for certain reasons that we can't discuss. Anyway, anyway, we live in an interesting world and interesting times. Anyway, what else does this mean? What can you extrapolate from this data, from this information? You can, with reasonable certainty, on top of the expectation that, dog and pet food and, pet supplies are going to, continuously be in demand and into further demand going into the future. Um, on the sovereign level, you can estimate that demand for social services and food stamps, housing assistance, actual child and social services, because kids that come from single mother households tend to be a little. And I can tell you from personal experience, it takes a monumental effort to try to break out of, if you're a male especially, to try to break out of the essentially brainwashing and indoctrination. Being raised by a single mother, I'm going to tell you the truth, you are much more likely to come out neurotic. All right, not medical advice, but you are much more likely to come out neurotic and maybe a bit schizo, just because if you grow up, especially in a high estrogen environment, as a boy, you see how women deal with things, and it is not the correct preparatory scenario to grow up as a male, because as a female, of course, the world cares more about you and gives more of a fuck about you than as as a male, because if you're a male, you go out into the world with more female-esque expectations that the world is going to maybe take care of you a bit more. It's not gonna just leave you out to rot and, you know, then you actually grow up and, you separate yourself slowly. You do your Generally, it's a decade of wandering out in the desert, could be 5, could be 10 years. And then you get older, and of course, the real world hits you like a ton of bricks that somehow flew off a train going 80 miles an hour and just decks you. All right, because now, if you're a male, you're in the real world and you get to play on hard mode. Okay, so there's that. There's going to be higher taxes or higher flows that are going to have to go to social services, welfare programs, medical services for the poor, because, of course, single mothers across the board, almost all of them are very low in terms of socioeconomic standing, because of course kids take a lot of time away from work, and it's a thing like the companies that employ women predominantly, especially those that have converted into the no straight white males. Totally not discrimination, but the companies that do that, they are more prone to look the other way because obviously, management is more gives more of a break to people with kids when it comes to having to, just get up and, go deal with whatever the hell the issue is if something comes up. On the other hand, if you're a male, you don't really get anywhere near as much of a break as women do. All right, so lower productivity, more demand for welfare services, social services, Medicaid, Medicare, well, nah, not Medicare, later in life, but Medicaid, food stamps, housing assistance, TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families. There's going to be a lot more demand for that, so taxes are going to have to either go up, or in most cases, what's just going to end up happening is men are just going to start working less to contribute less as the rates go up, so women are going to have to work more to pay for their own shit. Okay? What else can we extrapolate from the data outside of that? If you are a bank, a creditor, or a corporate, you can reasonably expect that one, you are going to, as a corporate, if you're trying to sell things, you are going to have more and more credit options. All right. Most single women, of course, that lower socioeconomic standing means that if they have any big purchases, whether women are buying, making good purchase decisions or poor purchase decisions, it doesn't particularly matter. They're going to be doing it on credit. All right. So whether you are trying to sell cars or TVs or washing machines, dryers, any of that, new kitchen sinks doesn't particularly matter what the item's going to be. Women purchasing it are going to be doing it via credit, which means women are going to spend the majority of their lives paying debts into infinitum. Okay. Because one thing, and every single guy knows this, if you put $100 in any female's hands, it's spent before it hits the skin. Okay. 100% every time. It is spent before it hits the skin. If you up it to a G, a solid grand, generally it takes a little bit more time for them to figure out how to spend it. But if there's one thing that women will do under all circumstances, if they have money, they will spend it. Men, on the other hand, are a lot more tight about their spending. Given men will do the same things, especially if they're in lower socioeconomic standing, because they've most likely had things that they either have to fix or get, like critical things like long distance lit dispensers, things like that. Men are more prone to spend until they think they have enough of what they need to cover themselves in the now and going forward. And then after that point, they will tighten up with spending to the point where, especially as the economy gets worse, they become tighter and tighter in terms of wallet defense to avoid spending so they can cover themselves when the eventual firings, terminations, layoffs, anything else come up. All right. Again, it is a lot harder to be a guy in this world. With women being, of course, we already did nudge on productivity a bit, but we also have to keep in mind that a lot of companies are actively discriminating as part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion thing. Um, a lot of companies, so there is, of course, regulatory bodies that exist where if you are hiring specific types of people, but not the right kinds, they could look into your books, look into your hiring practices, and hammer you and your company, or if you're a small business owner, your company with fines for doing it. Okay. But of course, the level of discrimination flipped because we live in everybody hate whitey world now. So what ends up happening is companies that are quote unquote committed to diversity. Here's the reality right off the bat. The whole premise of diversity, equity, and inclusion was to supposedly get more Hispanics and blacks and other races into these higher level fields. All right, these higher level office jobs, quote unquote, adult daycare jobs, essentially. Um, what ended up happening is white women, because companies don't want to have to deal with any of the ethnic um, behaviors that come from black and brown communities, companies fulfilled their diversity quota in most cases by just hiring a whole fuckload of white women. Okay, so the majority of quote unquote diversity is hiring white women. Now, companies, of course, that have fully staffed most of their managerial and office and corporate suites with females, because women hate men for various reasons, and there is very much the feminist push in there. A lot of these companies are openly discriminating against men, especially white men now. Okay, which it's a thing. It's just like with the boomers refusing to offer decent pay rates to uh, younger generations, especially younger generations that their kids are a part of. You essentially wipe the board so no one in that generation can afford anything, which has the knock on effect of also fucking over their kids and their ability to earn, get a house, any of that, any of the normal life goals. Okay? Now, back to preferential hiring practices. Companies that have been largely taken over by white women with the DEI push. These companies, these organizations, of course, are not hiring men, which has quite a few issues. One, men are the primary, regardless of race, men are the primary contributors in terms of actual productivity, saleable productivity. Women, on the other hand, are not chief contributors in any form or fashion. The majority of women are a drag on financial resources, and not just that, but because women, not just they don't just get an easier break from the corporates, but once they're in the corporates, they essentially do a lot of self-worship even though they don't want to admit it. So what ends up happening is you end up with a bunch of an entire organization full of unproductive women who all have other things they have to do, not work. So bye. And then what ends up happening eventually is the corporations run into bankruptcy and just get run into the ground. Not that the investors really pay attention or care too much, because most of investing is just gambling now, and all it takes is one story getting out in the media and a push from a billionaire who's looking to buy up a cheap stock and flip it for quite a bit of money. Um, That's really what saves a lot of companies, at least when it comes to their stocks. Regardless, lower productivity across the board, even in the bureaucracy. So you're looking at government working slower, corporations working slower, sales slowing down, repairs slowing down, just about every single facet of the economy is slowing down to a grinding halt in a lot of cases, especially in the trades. Even if this giant push to get young people into the trades works out, the reality is the issue with the trades isn't the fact that it's not that we don't have enough people in the trades, it's that we don't have enough people that we can pay the lowest price possible. Okay? Essentially, what the push in the trades is trying to do, it's not to give kids a decent career that sets them up for the future. No, they want to get the cost of carpenters down, plumbers down, electricians down, HVAC down. All right, they want to bring down the costs. All right, if you have one plumber in your small town and all of a sudden you have five plumbers in your small town, what ends up happening, and plumbing is actually incredibly hard to get into just because of the amount of bullshit surrounding it, and so is electrical for that fact, for the same reasons, slightly different but the same. Honestly, the thing is with electrical, the biggest advantage is also the biggest disadvantage. If you get in good with the electrical union, you're solid. If you don't, you are going to be paying a lot more money to get into electrical. All right. And they laugh about that. They do. They do 100%. The exact quote was, those poor bastards. All right. Because essentially, in the state where they were operating, they totally didn't, collectivize the entire union to vote for one person. Then conveniently, that person gets in and then increases the minimum required hours or time to do things not by the union standard, to do things outside of the union in order to become official, in order to become licensed. And essentially, because of that, the people who were going the college route and bypassing the union entirely were having to pay an extra 20 to 100,000, depending on the school, so they can get another year of curriculum in order to qualify to sit for the test. Okay, good God. Anyway. So the push for getting people into the trades is a trap. It's a trap on the lending side to go to these trade schools. Many of them are just cropping up now as a cheap and easy way to scrape money. And the lenders, of course, are charging higher rates as compared to traditional college to go to these trade schools, which are inflating their rates faster than you can blink. Okay. Oh, there's so much demand. Oh, good God. Anyway, with women led organizations, you are going to see productivity just continue to decline, and men are increasingly unwilling to deal with female bullshit. All right, I've also been on the receiving end of this. In my own life, early on starting out, I worked for an organization that was essentially managed by a bunch of angry, man hating schmesbians, um, because YouTube, of course, polices that word as well. Um, and I ended up being on the receiving end of, oh, we have a new system. And the new system conveniently did not assign hours to certain people. I was one of those people. I essentially got pushed out of that place, even though it was my second job. I was getting an extra 20 hours on top of my 40, which ended up paying for a guitar. Yeah, I know. Figures, right? Anyway, um, and an amp. Solid setup. Anyway, the reality is, the overall economic productivity is going to continue to decline. Men, of course, are going to continue to pull back. Women are not just going to be the number one source of spend, they're going to be the number one holders of credit. And they're going to be paying an incredible amount of interest because when you end up leasing something, in most cases, just buying something on credit, in a lot of cases, you pay double. All right, this is the way it works out. Like furniture stores in particular are known for this. If you buy a new sofa on credit, the creditor they go through, you know, cheap, easy, essentially guaranteed close every single time. The creditor that they go through, the way that the late fees are set up, don't ever get a late fee with them, but the way that the fee structure is set up and the way that the interest is calculated, you are paying double for that item just right off the bat. You are going to be paying double. So if you pay 5 grand for an entire furniture set, when all is said and done, you will be 10 grand in the hole. All right. And what makes it even worse is if you do get a late fee or any of the other, of course, that goes higher and higher and higher. All right. So less productivity, more demand for government services, less participation by men across the board. Corporations, which are already largely on the brink, like this is the reality. Outside of the AI boom, these corporates are sinking. All right. A lot of these corporations are losing money, even the ones that you wouldn't expect to be losing their asses and having their asses handed to them. A lot of the big ones, you have no idea. They're not doing good. They are not doing good. Like, for instance, all of the push against a certain company known for wire transfers. Okay. When the push against migrants started spinning up, all right, even though we haven't officially deported more people than Obama was during the Obama years, we were still about there. We haven't deported any more people than is expected. The push in the campaign was largely directed to scare people to go back to their home countries, all right? Regardless, a certain organization, which is known for money transfers, took a massive hit from that because they were set up and they had a bunch of deals set up. So to ease the process, because their wire transfer system largely had money coming in from imported workers from all over the world, they would put money into the wire service and wire it back to their home countries, their country of origin. So they took a pretty solid hit on that. All right. There's a lot of interesting things going on, and no matter what corporations say to you, they absolutely love the system as it is, even though right now it's kind of biting them severely in the ass. Okay, is the reality is, between all the buybacks, like the fact that you can become an executive of just about any major corporation in this country, you just do stock buybacks. You don't even have to do a single fucking thing. You just sign off if you are in the decision train. You just sign off to do buybacks. Company, the actual organization, because it is a separate entity from the people who run it, the brand of the company ends up borrowing X amount of millions or even billions of dollars. The leadership, all right, quote unquote leadership, they buy up a fuckload of their own, or not buy up, what am I thinking? They give themselves stock options, so they give themselves a whole fuckload of freshly minted stock, and then they borrow the money, and then the company, slowly going private, buys all the shares back. And as the price inflates, leadership sells out. The people lower down in the system who are auto invested into it with their 401ks and the like, they end up losing any of those gains because they can't just force direct. In a lot of cases, at least, they can't just force direct. And leadership makes off with a fucking fortune, which this used to be banned in the 80s. It's still illegal in Europe to do this because essentially it's insider trading, stock manipulation, and arguably, depending on how you want to look at it, I know corporate America does not want to call it this, but it is essentially fraud. Um, Regardless, they do stock buybacks, enrich themselves, and then overall the company declines because over time the interest payment on all that borrowed money that they're using to enrich themselves at the cost to the company itself, all of that debt eventually accumulates and just sucks the organization dry. There are tons of name brand corporations out there who have such massive debt loads, and it's not because their operations costs are going insane, it's because the C suite is just mining every single last bit of juice out of that. They're squeezing every ounce of life out of these organizations. And what the hell do the investors have to say about this? Not a fucking thing. Not a fucking thing, because people invest in companies that are 20 to 1 overvalue, and they don't give a single fuck. They don't give a single fuck. The only time people cry is when the prices go down and they're on the wrong side of it. Okay? The majority of quote unquote investors, I mean, the entire stock market has essentially been powered by passive flows of people working at a company for 20 plus years, getting their gold watch and their fucking tube of crackers. All right. The boomer model is what essentially built up the stock market to what it is today. Why is everything so fucked up? They don't make things like they used to in the good old days. The good old days. Yeah, the good old days died because you paid for it to die. I hate to tell you, but the reason why the cars suck, the reason why everything else sucks, is because you guys invested in all of it. You just threw money blindly through your retirement accounts. You threw money blindly at corporations that have been slowly strip mining every single part of the American economy and running into the ditch. So, lower productivity, higher demand for government services, lower. It's not even productivity, it's just lower initiative, because corporations that are predominantly female, they're not trying to do anything new. Everybody's just trying to protect their jobs so they can keep their piece in the feeding chain. All right, when they do buybacks and the like, um, men are going to continue pulling back. Corporations are going to be lethargic. Government's going to be overrun with welfare demands. Things are going to be less effective, less productive, and I am willing to bet that the push for the trades is going to end up blowing up in everybody's face. The debts are going to be massive. The pay rates, like if this actually goes through as they expect it to, as they're trying to make it, all right, as they're trying to sell it, if this goes through, you're going to see electricians making $20 an hour. Okay, it sounds ridiculous. It does. I know. Believe me, it does. You know what else sounds ridiculous? The idea that all of the pensions tied to companies that serve public utilities, all right, just a moment, that all of the pension plans that are tied to the trades are also going to drop to zero. Damn it, I lost the cap. There we go. 1 second. Okay. The pension plans, the retirement plans, when it comes to the electricians who are working for utility companies and the rest, they are probably going to go bankrupt along with every other pension in the United States. So not only are the pay rates going to collapse, regardless of what the union tries to do, any of the unions, any of the branches, any of them, the rates will go down. The retirement plans will just vaporize. All right, most likely. Again, not financial advice, but I fully expect them all to vaporize. And then the only thing that the electricians are going to be able to do is work for $20 an hour like everybody else. Okay? Now, of course, there'll be certain bright spots that don't run into this issue, like the guys who have to climb towers, guys running nuclear plants that deal with the arc flash, or, well, are more likely to get arc flashed. Those guys will be able to retain better pay, but, for the most part, the electricians, the plumbers, HVAC, carpentry, the pay rates are going to decline, all right? Honestly, one place where the overall rates aren't going to decline is probably roofing. All right, especially right now, because one of the corporations that produce because there's two primary types of shingles on the market right now. There's the standard three tab, and then in a lot of areas, they were starting to mandate, this is mostly on the HOA side, they were starting to mandate quote unquote architectural shingles, all right, which they look nicer, they supposedly were more effective, but one of the companies that was producing them, I don't know which, I'm not going to name drop them. Well, I can't name drop them if I wanted to, but anyway, um, one of the companies that was producing those architectural shingles had to come out and essentially be like, yeah, we fucked up on production. So as a roofer, you're not going to run out of work. Every house that you did with that specific brand architectural shingle, you're either going to get paid off the warranty. Um, it it's a thing. There's going to be a decent amount of money in it for roofers. The pay rates aren't necessarily going to move too much up or too much down, but the workload is going to maintain, relative reasonable standing. All right. Nobody's going to massive amounts of debt to become a roofer. It's fairly easy to become a roofer. You don't really need to know that much. You just have to be okay with working with heights and wearing a harness, especially depending on how high of a slope we're talking. So honestly, if you are just starting out, like especially if you're a young kid, 18, 19, 20, roofing might be a solid bet in terms of pay. Some of the warehouses are still paying good. Some of the roofing is still going to be relatively stable. All right, it's a thing. It's a thing. I don't know how we got onto this subject, but regardless, there's going to be a lot of money made lending money to women to, for good and bad spending decisions. There's going to be a decent amount of money made if you work for the government, if you are okay with working for the public sector, being a caseworker, whether it's for the welfare office or child services, any of that. There's going to be a decent amount of growth there. In terms of people spending, of course, women are definitely going to be having a lot more pets. They're going to have a lot more fur babies, which means there's going to be a lot more money in not just food and toys and, all of the essentials and non essentials for pets, but there is also going to be more money in being a veterinarian, assuming you can run your own office and not get bought out by private equity, which has unfortunately captured quite a lot of the offices. All right, of course they don't tell you, all right, because most private equity when it first started taking over things, they would whitewash and corporatize it, and people realized that, okay, we're not dealing with the local doctor's office anymore. You're dealing with the corporate office. And people started rebelling against that. So, in most cases, when private equity buys up a doctor's office or a vet clinic or any of that, they will keep everything the same. It's just everybody's on the corporate payroll. Okay, and the price is double or triple. All right, which is honestly pretty fucking bad, truth be told. Like the idea of having pets and having pet insurance. Honestly, when they started selling pet insurance as a thing, a lot of people were like, nah, just pay out of pocket. Now it's just like, oh, okay. You're looking at, $2,000, $3,000 vet bills. And it's like, good God, this shit's too pricey. And it is. It is. Increasingly, especially with private equity at the helm of a lot of the vet clinics, you honestly should consider, if you have pets, getting pet insurance, just because those rates are never coming down unless we get some new vets out of the college system and they actually are trying to do good for the world and not just being slimy scuzzbags trying to mine every penny out of your pocket. You need people who actually care about people, care about pets, not care about putting more money in their bank account. But at the same time, everybody's broke, everybody's in debt, so a certain amount of it you gotta look past. Mm. Still, the expectation going forward is assuming the system doesn't completely collapse, and at this point, I'm pretty sure it will, but of course, 0% interest rate policy, let the printers print, and COOF as an excuse to go direct and put money into people's pockets. It's a thing. They are inventing new and interesting things that otherwise wouldn't be possible, or they're willing to take the risks that originally they put off the table in order to keep the system going, because the reality is, like, we all know, all right, if you've been tied into any of the financial flows, if you've been higher up in a corporation, if you've had any kind of legitimate exposure to how things are actually working, it is a fucking miracle that everything is still mostly in one piece. Now that's starting to slide because the money in circulation is starting to decline again, which means, at the very least, personally, I am expecting, if not, AI and UBI, that there'll be some other crisis going into the future that they will use as an excuse to just start firing up another printing press or two and just slipping money directly into people's accounts again, especially with all the layoffs and the overall stress and, honest to God, failure in the labor market, because it is failing. The pay is too low, the expectations are too high, the demands have far outstripped people's ability or willingness to participate in the system anymore. Because, touching back on the topic of credentialism, like the sea of credentials, like you're talking a double sided sheet of paper with 10-point font of, you have to have this certification, this one, 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 and the fact that companies legitimately seem to be actually expecting that. Like, do you honestly expect people to go to college for 4 to 5 years and then do 2 years at a cost of 20 to 50K to get this entire sea of professional certifications and professional documentation, and somehow get experience whilst not being on the payroll at any company, before even considering them? It's unreasonable. All right. Also, part of the problem with, women capturing most organizations, because they are crazy enough to ask for a laundry list so long that you're just looking at them cross-eyed. All right. It's the reality. Oh, God help us all, right? Anyway, I think I'll end it here. Honestly, I've been recording a lot of like 30 to 40 minute long runs recently. It's kind of getting a bit out of hand. I got to get back down to like 20-minute topics, 15-minute topics. But honestly, if you guys like these longer ones and enjoy them, let me know. Like, comment. Oh God, what is it? Ring the bell, ding the bell, tickle the bell, do all things to your heart's content to the bell. Leave a comment, hype it if it comes up. Subscribe if you haven't. Share this with anyone who needs to hear it. And if you are in need of personal or business consulting, or Sovereign will help municipalities, um, or state and federal governments, honestly, who, honest to God, need probably more help than even a trained psychiatrist can handle. Um, if you need consulting in any form, stop by www.spadesconsulting.com without the dash, and I'll end it here. You guys have a good one. I'll see you next time.